One. Hey, people. This is Trish Wood, and this is episode number 3 of the little trucker protest show we're calling Coffee with a Convoy. So here's my morning Joe. We've got a big lineup today, and there seems to be a lot of stuff going on. So this is partly a check-in and partly to explore a little bit more in depth some of the things that you're probably hearing about from Ottawa and other places. We've got David Anber coming up, who is a lawyer who's been assisting the truckers on various issues, including helping Jerry Charlebois, who was the elderly gentleman who was arrested by police in a super aggressive way. Really unpleasant piece of video to watch of something like that happening in our country. We have the video for you too, and we'll play that. Then we've got Chris Barber, who you've met, who's one of the truckers hunkered down in Ottawa, who's going to update us on what's happening there. Then we go to Winnipeg to a trucker named Rick Wall of, I believe it's called Richland Trucking. And he witnessed it was a kind of like a vehicular attack on some of the protesters out there a few days ago. And he was actually there and saw it. So we're going to get a bit of a description of what happened there and maybe a little bit more information about what that protest is doing. And then we're going to end with our eyes and ears on the ground in Ottawa. David Freiheit, the brilliant videographer who is telling truths that the mainstream media is avoiding. You'll probably have watched Tucker Carlson last night, and he was really celebrating these independent videographers who are going in and telling the story of truckers that the mainstream media won't tell. They're too busy digging up dirt and slandering everybody. But the stories the truckers are telling on the ground to these videographers and other people really describes who and what they are. And it's a truth that the media just doesn't want to talk about. So we're going to hear from him in a minute. But I want to start with David Anber, the lawyer who's representing the truckers on some issues, and also Jerry Charlebois. He is doing audio only today because he's driving. He's a busy guy. So let's see if we've got him. David, are you there?
Yes. Hi, Trish.
Hi, David. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very, very well. I guess if you're involved with the truckers, you're a busy guy, eh? There's lots of stuff going on.
I've been getting hundreds of emails, text messages, and calls over the last few days, especially as things have started to ramp up in terms of government response and rumor of further response to come.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that first, I guess, because everybody's hearing the rumors that some dire event is going to take place and that they are kind of ramping up. What are you hearing, and what is the evidence for that on the ground, David?
Well, I think because of the prevalence of social media, there's, I think, a tendency for rumor to start.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's always been the possibility of rumor, but to proliferate more than it used to absent social media. So I don't know exactly. I know that there was some circumstantial evidence, such as a post that the OC Transpo allegedly put up looking for certain bus drivers to engage in a certain short-term project that was supposed to happen yesterday. There were other videos that were circulating around. So again, it gives me reason to suspect that something is going to happen. And I mean, the government wants to do something. So I speculate that something might be happening, but I really don't have any firm evidence. And, so I don't know what the next step is going to be from their end.
Well, it's interesting because that tripartisan phone call last night with the Prime Minister and the other two party leaders suggests that perhaps he is looking for permission, privately to amp up. That's how I read that. And I guess also Joe Biden, the most unpopular president in the history of the world, is also advising the Prime Minister or offering his help. So that's also not a very good look, but what can you do? So how else are you helping out? You're helping with tickets and that sort of thing, are you, for the truckers?
Well, yeah, I think what happened is that this protest has gone through a couple different phases. I mean, the first phase was sort of the arrival in Ottawa, and then the next phase was sort of like the complaining from some of the people in the city that are not sharing the view of the protesters.
Yeah.
And then we sort of went into a phase, I think, about a week ago, where charges started getting laid of a non-criminal nature. And when I went in and I looked at what the Ottawa police was reporting, they were things like using your cell phone while driving and driving with a suspended license. So, I mean, I think what they did was they started engaging in traffic enforcement.
Yeah.
And so there was a number of tickets that came out there. I think I had one that came in that, unstamped cigarettes. So stuff that's sort of not related, but basically them being very strict in enforcing whatever rules are on the books.
Yeah.
And then we saw it move to the seizure of gas canisters. That was the next sort of shoe to drop. And what I find interesting about that phase, Trish, is that the vast majority of people that contacted me about either having their property seized or even being arrested, no charges were actually laid, even though the property was seized and or the arrest was made on the basis of an alleged criminal offense, that being mischief. There haven't been no charges, at least from the people who've contacted me. They've been released after being detained in custody for some time.
So what does that mean? How does one read that? Does that suggest that it's maybe intended to be a bit more harassy than it is actually kind of a legal or enforcement move?
I think there's a good reason to think that's the case, Trish. I mean, the standard of proof to arrest somebody is not a particularly high standard of proof. It's what's called reasonable and probable grounds, or reasonable grounds to believe.
Yeah.
So people often think that the police, when they arrive at the scene of an alleged crime, that they have to, make sure that they believe everybody and disbelieve the people whose stories don't check out, and that they have to conduct some kind of extensive investigation. I mean, they have to investigate, but really once the police have a certain bare amount of information to believe an offense has occurred, that's the standard to arrest. But that's also the standard to lay a charge as well. So
Yeah.
it's really unusual to have a situation where somebody gets arrested on belief that an offense has been committed, and then for the offense not to be charged and the person given a court date.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've suspected all along that the mischief allegation was somewhat tenuous. I think that when the horns were blaring, I could see the case for a mischief being made out a little bit more.
Yeah.
But that, since the injunction, there hasn't been that going on. And so I know the mayor keeps talking about, and the police chief keeps talking about this like it's some kind of a mischief. But again, we're dealing with what may be two competing sets of laws. I mean,
Yeah.
even a literal interpretation of the mischief provisions has to come into some friction with the protections under the Charter of Rights that grant people the right to protest and to freely express themselves. So we'll have to see what happens next.
Okay, let's move on to Mr. Charlebois. I want to play this video. It's a minute long, and it is the arrest of Jerry Charlebois, who I believe is 80, and he is now your client. But let's just show the video for people who haven't seen it, and then we'll quickly go to you about legally what is going on here. And then we'll go to Mr. Charlebois' son, also named Jerry, to talk about how he's doing after this, because I think he was quite badly shaken up. So here is the video of the arrest by Ottawa police of Jerry Charlebois.
For what? Hey! What are you doing? What are you doing?
Failing to ID.
Hey! That's assault! I've got it all on video.
What's wrong with you? That's assault.
You failed to ID. Yeah, he failed to ID.
Get back! Hey! Get back!
Stop
Get back!
We're back. We're filming.
Get back!
We're doing our part.
Get back!
Don't touch me. Who the fuck do you think you are? Fucking pig goose.
It's all on video. No, don't say anything.
Pig goose.
Don't say anything.
You attack me? You attack me? You're a fucking goose.
Hey, Ritz, stand down.
You attack me?
Stand down. Stand down.
What
Ritz,
am I doing?
no, it's peaceful.
What am
No,
I
let
doing?
them
Fucking
do.
attack me, you fucking goof. Fucking fucking not doing shit. Touch me, punk ass.
This is going right to the media. YouTube. What's your name and badge number? What's your name and badge number? What's your name and badge number? What's your name and badge number?
Yeah, you're assaulting.
Look, they're hurting an old man, a Canadian citizen. It's communism. This is communism. He's scared.
Your fucking guns.
Communist.
You stand with the communist fucking government.
Call your police chief. He'll back you up.
Government's going down.
Call the police.
Call your
Okay.
police chief.
So sorry about that. I should have probably done a language warning for people, but obviously the people on the scene watching the arrest of Mr. Charlebois were upset and enraged by what they were seeing. He's a diminutive little man. Like doesn't seem too threatening. So just before we go to his son, I just want to ask you, David, what legally is being done on behalf of Mr. Charlebois after that incident?
Okay, well, there's a couple of things. First of all, Mr. Charlebois received a ticket for unnecessary noise under the Highway Traffic Act. So
It was honking, right? Was he honking?
Yeah, well, that's what the police are alleging. I mean, I haven't seen the disclosure yet, so we're left simply with what we understand the allegations to be. But I mean, and then there's a question of whether or not it's unreasonable and so on. But I don't even think we get to that question in court, because I think there's a bigger and more pressing question, that being is, did what take place constitute an abuse by the police? And if so, should the charges be stayed or stopped because of that? And I think the answer to that question is going to be yes. So that's the angle that I'm going to be taking. The arrest, and we can talk about this more if you have questions about that, Trish, but the arrest was unlawful. I don't think there's any question about it. And
He certainly
the
didn't
manner-
appear very threatening. That's for sure. He did not seem threatening at all. But okay,
Right.
so David, we got to go because we got a full hour today. But thanks so much for doing this, and we're going to go to Mr. Charlebois' son, also named Jerry, now to talk about how he's doing. So, hi Jerry, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Trish?
Good. Well, I'm good. How are you doing? How's your dad?
He's not. He's not doing that good. He's pretty badly traumatized. It's not my dad anymore.
What do you mean?
My dad was different. Like, it's just not, when you talk to him, you could see it in him, and there's a lot of things going on with him right now. So just a lot of things going on with him. Just meant like he just can't, doesn't understand why they arrested him. He goes, I shouldn't have been arrested. Like, every time, if you ask him a question, he just starts going off about what happened.
He doesn't understand. He doesn't understand what happened. Yeah.
No, like, and like he has a hearing aid. He's hearing impaired. Like, so he's just confused, very, very, very confused right now. And
you used the word, or somebody in the family used the word traumatized. I mean, do you feel that he is from that?
absolutely, like, there's a lot more going on with him. He's been they almost had to call the doctor last night because his hand is so swollen and infected. And my brother had to send a picture over to me. My wife's a pharmacist, so and she just gave some advice and whatever, because they were worried about taking him to the doctor, to the hospital, right? Because
So he's got some bruising and stuff, does he?
Oh, bruising, and it only stopped bleeding. His hand only stopped bleeding 2 days ago, maybe,
What was the bleeding caused by, in your view?
from the handcuffs.
Hmm.
From the handcuffs.
Yeah. What, generally speaking, Jerry, I mean, how are you kind of processing what happened in a larger sense?
I
Having seen the video, obviously.
think I've seen the video probably 50 times or more. Like, because I see it all over social media and that, and on Twitter a lot. Most of my stuff's on Twitter, so I just can't. I don't get it. I just, like, as a police, like, why can't you just say, if I'm a police officer, I'm going, hey, why did you honk that horn? Okay, no problem. Just don't honk it again. Just keep on moving. Like, to do that, I just don't get it. Disgusting. It makes me sick to my stomach. I've got friends. My daughter was crying for like a half hour after she seen it when it first came out. Like a lot of support from a lot of people, like coming in that's seen it, and they just can't believe it.
Yeah, it does seem a bit like well, for sure, it seems like overreach on behalf of the police. I just don't really understand why that kind of behavior is necessary or sanctioned if indeed they do sanction it. But yeah. So what are the next steps? I know you've got Mr. Anber on your behalf. He's going to fight whatever charges are involved in
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, I have David Anber. I approached them. I'd be honest, I had no clue what to do. I had a lot of media contacted me like the night before, like a couple of nights ago, and then I contacted David, and I did not know what to do right off the bat. I needed, in case I thought, what if he says something wrong or whatever, right, to the media, and
Yeah.
so and it was crazy how many people were trying to get his story in that. It was so I contacted David. David Anber is going to do. He's our lawyer. David Anber also put me in touch with a civil lawyer, which we will speak to later on today.
So you might sue for money or something?
I'm not too sure. We're going to talk to him and see what happens. So,
Does this change the way you view your country, Jerry?
absolutely. I'm disgusted in it. I'm disgusted in the police force here in Ottawa. I know a few police officers. I've done a lot of coaching of hockey, and I know quite a few police officers because I coach the kids. So it's disgusting. I can't believe what's going on here in our country right now.
Oh, it's quite interesting because this story has not been focused on by the Canadian media in a significant way, but boy, the British media has gone to town on it.
Yes.
And as have some people in the American media too. It's remarkable that people here are just not paying attention to it. Could you just to be clear, could you delineate for me, just before we say goodbye here, but delineate for me what injuries, if any, he sustained directly as a result of that, in your belief? What do you believe has happened? Because there's some photographs of bruising and that sort of thing. What do you think actually happened to him physically as a result of that arrest?
Physically, his arms and hands he can't open his hand and close it. It's got worse and worse, swollen up. He's got medication for that. His shoulder, he still can't lift his arm up, and he's got some bruising on his knees. That's physically. So,
Yeah.
and can I just,
Yes.
like you said, the other media, like nobody, and you are right, like nobody has approached me from mainstream media. No one.
I know. And the Daily Mail had it above the fold 2 days ago, like above the fold, like big headline, right? I mean,
Yes.
I don't understand what's happening. I just don't understand what's happening in this country right now with the media. I don't get it. I had a big career as a reporter in some of the best places in this country for media, and I don't understand what they're doing. I don't understand why this wouldn't be a story. I just don't get it. It's
No, me neither.
beyond comprehension.
No, me
Anyway,
neither.
Mr. Charlebois, thank you very much, and good luck to you, and thanks for doing this. I'm very grateful to you.
Thank you for doing it for my dad. Like I hope this gets out. I know it has been out, but thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Mr. Charlebois. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. So that was Jerry Charlebois, who is the son of the elderly gentleman also named Jerry Charlebois, who was, it looks like he was manhandled by the police. That's what it looks like. He's got some bruises, and clearly he was not understanding what was happening to him at the time. It was kind of an upsetting thing to witness in that video. And hey, folks, thank God for video, right? Because it captures things. It captures things that maybe went unreported before. So standing by, I promised Tamara today, but Tamara is busy, and I think she's busy maybe with the Give, Send, Go, who are also now in the crosshairs a little bit. There was some kind of a judicial outcome yesterday, which I don't quite understand, given that Give, Send, Go is an American company, why an Ontario court would have the power to do anything. But we'll find out more about that later. anyway, she's not here, but we do have Chris Barber, who is one of the leaders of the trucker protest, and he's standing by in Ottawa, and he can bring us up to date on maybe on Give Send Go and what's been happening the last couple of days and where they're going. Hi, Chris, are you there?
I'm here. Good morning, Trish.
How you doing?
I'm good. Tired, but we're getting there.
You must be just. Are you sleeping at night or no?
Sleeping tonight, yes. Yeah, my wife's here, keeping me healthy, so that's a bonus. I got to go
Yeah.
in for a drive last night. We pulled some trucks out of downtown to get some pressure off the police. So now we're out doing a few little slow rolls here and making sure the public sees us.
Yeah, and what happens with a slow roll? What does that mean?
I think we were on the 416, 417 last night in the middle of Ottawa. We had about OPP drove up to the pilot truck in front of me and said, "Hey, do you mind speeding it up a little bit? You're 8 kilometers long and 3 lanes of traffic deep."
Wow. So I guess they'll notice, right?
They'll notice. They knew where we were before, but right now they kind of don't know where we are or where we're going. So we're all safely. We're not hindering traffic. We're just making a presence and slowing people down a little bit to take note.
Yeah. What are what are you hearing about the possibility of some kind of a raid or some kind of action to get you guys out of there? I did say earlier to David Anber that I wonder if the Prime Minister's phone call to the opposition parties was kind of maybe advising or seeking some sort of support for an action like that. What are you hearing about that?
We've heard a lot of stuff. Our intel, I guess, is telling us that it was supposed to be 2 nights ago. They had troubles trying to ground up enough officers that were actually going to take part in it. Last night was another threat. 4:30 this morning. Nothing happened. Obviously, I've been out for my coffee this morning, talked to a few drivers. Everything was safe. Police were in yesterday cleaning tents up, getting rid of some of the traffic and the stuff that's been built on some streets apparently, which all par for the course. I want to remind everybody too, like 90% of the officers that are involved here are just doing their jobs. So they've been absolutely amazing. There's been smiles on their face underneath their masks. They're good. In every group of people, you've got the bad ones, right? A lot of these officers, I gave a shout out yesterday. They're doing an amazing job. And,
I'm really glad you said that after obviously doing the story about Mr. Charlebois, because I was at the Avenue Road and Bloor trucker event last Saturday, and the police were blocking the trucks from going down Avenue Road, and they were lovely. I have to say the cops were. I have a video of that event that I'm going to post soon. The cops were lovely and really trying to be diplomatic and kind, and you could see that some of them maybe kind of supported what the truckers were doing, but they couldn't say so. So I don't listen. I am not going to do what the mainstream media does, which is take a single event and smear a whole bunch of people with it. That's absolutely not what that Charlebois story is, Mr. Charlebois story is about, and it's not what we're doing here. So I just want to say that. Having said that, I think what the Charlebois story shows is that their people are on an edge right now too, and I think it's because there's no leadership coming from the Prime Minister's office on this, and that's when police officers like that do things like what they did. There's no leadership, right? So I'm glad you said that. So just talking a little bit more about what might happen if there was some kind of a raid or event. What do you think it would look like? Would they bring in tow trucks, do you think, to get you out, or what?
Well, we've got some factions around the city here right now that are pretty dug in. We've been trying to work with city police. What we're telling us is raid officers, riot officers, I guess, in full gear. They round us up. They do what they call a kettle.
Yeah.
And then the tow trucks will come in after that. But from what I've heard, they've had a hard time finding guys to operate the tow trucks. So most of them have come down with COVID all of a sudden, from what I hear.
Really? Yeah, it's interesting. So maybe they're supporting you. I bet.
I think so.
Yeah, they probably are. Yeah. So what's happening over the next couple of days? Because I know you've said since day one when we started talking that you're going to stay as long as it takes. And this feels like something that could end tomorrow or go on for a month. Does it feel that way to you too?
Yeah, I want to go home. I got animals to look after. Like, this would be really well if we could resolve these issues and go home. We've been really compliant with Mr. Trudeau. How embarrassing is it of somebody like that and somebody's nature like that for have this many people come together, become unified, and rally around a cause? And this guy is supposed to be the leader of this free nation, and yet he hurls a bunch of insults at us and then runs back into his chambers. Like, lead, please. Come and talk to us. Have a conversation. We've got medical professors that just want to have a debate and a conversation with these so-called science, right? It's not about the vaccines. This has never been about the vaccines. It's about the mandates and handcuffing Canadians for their business, for everything else. We're tired of it. We just want normal back again.
I said the other day that when I was down at the Toronto event, and I hear this about the events there too, that people who go there have it's a weird kind of spiritual awakening. They're super happy. And sometimes weepy. And I think it's because they feel they're coming out of something that was really bad for them. We see that reaction. And in Toronto, there were people, these were all walks of life, just like down there, all political stripes, all manner, like little old ladies and all kinds of stuff. And they were crying because somebody was finally sticking up for them. I hate to say this, it's maybe a bad analogy, but a lot of people who struggled through lockdowns and mandates were waiting for the cavalry to kind of ride in. I'm not saying that's you, because I'm sure that analogy could be twisted. But it does kind of feel like people are sort of riding to the defense of the citizens who were harmed by these things. That's how they see you, I think.
Yes. Yeah. I had a little French girl that I couldn't understand yesterday because I'm obviously... I skipped the French class in school, so I apologize if CBCCTV wants to jump over me for that. But a little French girl came up to me and hugged me so tight. I was wondering how I was going to take my next breath. And when she pulled away, she had nothing but tears running down her eyes. And man, that's pretty hard. That's what I've seen so many times out here. There's so many people that they just want to grasp something. They want something to try and get them out of the dungeon they've been in for the last 2 years.
Well, it's also, I think, about everybody was feeling unheard, right? Nobody was listening. The mainstream media was all kind of involved on the COVID narrative. And if you disagreed with what was the kind of officially accepted narrative, you were a bad person or a conspiracy theorist or some terrible thing. And so I think the freedom for people to express themselves and their fears and the harms that have been caused by some of these public health measures was really remarkably liberating. What do you think this young French girl was trying to say to you? What do you think was going on there?
There was just tears of joy. She was just I could understand thank you. She was getting that out, and it was, yeah. There's been many moments like that in the last couple of weeks that have come around that'll probably live in my heart for some time.
Yeah.
That was a cool thing.
Yeah. So what's up for the next couple of days? What are you expecting to happen?
Well, I'm hoping our lawyers were supposed to, our legal and lawyers, our inner circle was supposed to send a letter out to Mr. Trudeau yesterday, just stating we can get past this without sitting down at a table if you want, and the mandates, get an inquiry into how we can make sure this sort of thing never happens again. And the ignitions will be fired up and we'll be gone in 15 minutes after we get word on that. I haven't heard a response back yet. I think they were supposed to do some PR stuff. I'll probably get in trouble for telling you that later, but that's okay. I've kind of got a mouth on me. So more rules. Yesterday morning, some trucks hit the airport. Not hit the airport, but just drove in. There's one way in and one way out of the airport. We kind of made it a little bit difficult for some people to get on a plane. OPP and city police were scrambling pretty good. Last night we did a slow roll. We got trucks that are moving all over the city right now. They obviously were moving them guys out of downtown a little bit. We're on Wellington. That's the street that we've kind of set up stakes on. And then, we're just mobilizing. We're changing things up a little bit. The weekends here, we've got every hotel room is booked in the city that you can possibly find. So people are coming again. They want to take part in this big freedom rally. We'll be downtown, right in front of Parliament, in front of the stage there, having speeches and music. Of course, Sunday.
When is that? Is that Saturday or Sunday?
Both Saturday and Sunday. We have a beautiful service on Sunday down on the stage down there. If anybody wants to come down, it's Pastor Hildebrandt is up there. That guy is fired up. He's amazing.
Yeah. How has this changed you, Chris?
Oh, a lot. I don't know if we'll get back to normal life again. My wife is probably hoping so, but yeah, it's a lot of attention on us. I can't walk down the street without somebody wanting a hug or a handshake or a pat on the back. It's definitely changed me. Maybe
Well,
more,
you guys, sorry, go ahead.
more humble.
More humble. Oh, that's interesting. And maybe you guys are doing something to, I know that this will make heads spin, but, on in the legacy media, but you guys seem to be doing a lot to bring the country together in a strange sort of way. What I'm seeing in the demographics of the crowds you pull and the people who are talking, it's very, very interesting that it takes if I can say it, a blue-collar working person's movement to bring the country together while the eggheads are throwing epithets and ad hominem attacks at everybody and driving us apart. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing that that people are being brought together around this. So
it's amazing the legacy media didn't follow me yesterday. I had somebody giving me a big plastic bag full of Convoy 2022 socks. And what I did yesterday morning with my coffee, I walked around downtown and handed them out to the homeless people. And there were some truckers that wanted socks, and just a whole bag of them gone. Where's the media for that? They're going to pick up on the fact that, they're tearing us apart on our previous social media posts.
yeah. Anything new on the Give, Send, Go just quickly before we go? Because I got to move on. But did you know?
I haven't heard anything. I'll get briefed by legal today here and find out what the story is. Apparently Doug Ford's trying to get out of it. And if we touch the money, we're illegal, I guess. I don't know when these governments are going to stop this tyranny, because that's all it is at this point, is just tyranny.
Yeah. If you can't win the argument with the argument, this stuff just makes you look like a bully. I mean, this is really bad. This kind of crush the resistance at all costs without ever engaging or smear them. I mean, it's really bad. Anyway.
We're resilient. We're going to win this. So.
Okay, Chris, thanks. We'll be in touch again soon. And we're just going to move now to Rick Wall, who is in just outside of Winnipeg. And he's going to give us some information about the driver who drove into a trucker protest in Winnipeg recently, right? So tell me, you were there that night. Tell me what happened, Chris. Or not Chris, Rick.
Oh, good morning. First of all, I appreciate the opportunity for coming on with you. Excuse me. So I personally don't know anything about the driver, really, except for the fact that it was put out publicly by Winnipeg Police Service after the fact, I guess. And it was pretty evident based on the video footage that we had that it certainly looked like an intentional act. I think that's the video surveillance speaks for itself. Yeah. And of course, we denounce any violence or anything to that effect at that rally. It's a peaceful, law-abiding rally that's supposed to unite people, just like the rest of the country, the rest of the convoys across the country is doing right now.
Was anybody who? Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, yeah, it was a really unforeseen situation on the first day that we showed up there, but the Winnipeg police handled it really well. And fortunately, only one of the individuals that got struck was hospitalized and was later released with the minor injuries and was recovering at home. So we're just very thankful. It could have been a lot worse. If you watch the video, I mean, it looked, yeah. It could have been a lot worse. We're very thankful. We're praying for the family, praying for speedy recovery for the victim that did end up in the hospital and is recovering at home. He's at home. He or she is at home. Okay. And just if you could just describe, you were there. What did you see? Like, how did you see it happening?
I'll be honest, I physically didn't see it happening, but the surveillance camera footage that you saw was from one of our company trucks.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was on the scene. I just wasn't right there and didn't physically see it happen. But there was eyewitnesses, and there was also others that caught it on camera. It wasn't just our dash cam footage.
And so you saw the dash cam footage of it unfolding. And what did you think of it when you saw that footage?
Very. Like I said earlier, it was very disturbing. And again, it certainly looked like it was intentional. It was trying to disrupt the peaceful protest that we're trying to conduct there, and definitely wasn't one of our supporters. And it was just really unfortunate to see.
Yeah. One has to wonder, given also the background of this guy, can't speak to motive, But if some of the hateful rhetoric directed toward you guys to the trucker protests may have compelled this incident. I mean, obviously one can't draw conclusions, but the truckers are being demonized right now by
Yes,
certain people.
yes. Yeah, absolutely. But again, I just go back to saying that we denounce any violent acts, any racism, anything to that effect. I mean, we address it if we see anything in the crowd, not just a situation like this, but we've dealt with some minor other issues.
Yeah.
If we get some disruptors in the crowd, I mean, we address the situation right away, and if people don't want to come there to peacefully protest, we just kindly ask them to leave, and that's. It doesn't matter whether it's technically one of our protesters that's getting out of hand and that's not being peaceful. We'll ask them to leave as well. We want to make sure it's conducted out of peace, love, and kindness, and unity is what we built this movement on, and we certainly don't want to taint that. But you get the occasional disruptor in the crowd.
How frustrating has it been for you to watch how the mainstream media is reporting this story?
Well, the ongoing narrative just seems to continue, and it's hard to get any accurate coverage. Generally, they'll find something negative and they'll run with it, even though the positive overshadows the negative by miles. If they would actually spend a little bit of time on scene and watch, like Chris said, there's a lot of food being donated to homeless shelters for us as well. Anything that we can't consume on site is being donated. There is so there's homeless people that come there at night. We've seen that several times. We have a warm-up bus. We have bonfires. They'll come and warm up. We'll feed them. We'll give them a place to warm up. But mainstream media is never going to come cover that. They'll just they'll take a situation like we had there on Friday, like the one that we discussed earlier, and they'll kind of run with that. But they really need to come and start focusing on the positive that this movement is having.
Yeah. And just lastly, what is it? You're involved in the protests in Winnipeg. So where are they at, and what is your goal, Rick?
So we're located right in front of the legislature building in Winnipeg, we're at the corner of Broadway and Memorial. So we basically, Memorial shut down. That's kind of our main block there. We're parked right in front of the legislature grounds. We're not on the legislature grounds. Not actually on the property. Yeah. And our goal is the same as in Ottawa. And we're doing this in unison with Ottawa and all the other protests going on across the country. I'm not going to call them demands. Our requests, well, I guess they are sort of demands, but our request letter got sent out to Heather Stephenson on this past Monday. Yeah. And our requests are clear. We're asking for all COVID mandates to be lifted before we move. Same as the boys in Ottawa. We're doing this all together.
Yeah. And it seems to be happening. There's a piece of audio running around the internet this morning of Premier Ford here, who is like lockdown Harry, this guy, suggesting that they may be lifting here too. He may be making some kind of an announcement, which I never thought I would see in my lifetime. They were really dug in. So, and other provinces, yes, I think I heard something about PEI this morning. So you're having an impact whether they want to admit it or not. And that's great. I just wish that this had been approached differently by our leaders. I wish this was a chance to bring the country together, keep the identity politics out of it, keep the smear campaign, the propaganda out of it, and bring the country together. And I think that the uplifting festive atmosphere at these events is really showing Canadians what we've lost in the last 2 years. Really, I mean, that's why people are crying, because they realize what we've lost, right? I mean, it's bad.
I would just
neighbor against neighbor, and go ahead, Rick.
No, you were saying that that if the government, I'm not going to quote you exactly, but you're saying something to the effect that if the government leaders, would just allow us to unify the country. I think we've accomplished that. Quite honestly, we didn't need government leadership for that. We just needed the people. And that's something that's, from my point of view, I mean, it's been an absolutely amazing journey on how united this country has become. And we just need our government officials that don't want to work with us. We just need them to get out of the way and let us people, just let us people continue this movement, I guess, for lack of better words. Or we need our government officials to work with us, not against us. Like Chris said, we're just looking for an open dialogue. We're not getting, the communication line is not open yet in Winnipeg either. So we're just waiting for an open dialogue so we can have that conversation. We just want to be heard. It's pretty simple.
Are you sticking it out?
We are. Absolutely. We're fully committed in Winnipeg, just like the men and women in Ottawa are, and we're going to work together in unison with them.
What strange times we live in. It's really, I never thought I'd see anything like this. It's really nuts. But anyway, Rick, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Very, very grateful to you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, happy to do it, and have a good day.
Thank you. You as well. God bless.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
David.
Trish, hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
What a time to be alive. As I'm driving back from Ottawa yesterday, I'm listening to daytime radio in Montreal, CJAD. The show itself is just the most vitriolic propaganda you can possibly imagine. The people calling in have been led astray by pathological liars, where they're saying, the question yesterday was, should Trudeau even, resort to discoursing, engaging with these people? And you have people calling in saying he shouldn't lower himself to their level and talk to them. That's like, you idiots don't appreciate that these truck drivers bring you the phone that you're calling in this radio station on. They bring you the food that you eat, and they're the backbone of Canada. And you're regarding them like basically they're your slaves, that they exist to bring you your food and they should just shut up and drive. And that he's lowering himself to engage with the people that he represents. I mean, they've got it backwards. And I've never seen such a level of entitlement, snobbery, arrogance, and ignorance all come out at once. And it's a little discouraging.
Well, it's not good what's being revealed, is it, about our national character right now? Because I've seen in my Twitter feed, too, some of the people in Ottawa who are complaining about this, using phrases like trailer park. So all of a sudden, it's okay to say that our working people are trailer trash. Is that where we are right now? And why is that okay? That's hate speech, dude. So
No, but they've taken, for everyone who criticizes the United States, the people saying these things have taken a page out of the Democrats demonizing Trump supporters. If they're white trash, if you call them white trash, setting aside the fact that they're not only white, but if you call them white trash, you become the elitist snob who can tell them what to do because they don't know what's good enough for their own bodies, for their own families. You get to tell them what to do. It's just another form of ownership that they're claiming over people and saying, shut up and drive. But the propaganda, the misinformation, and the effect it does have on people, it's shocking. It's a little discouraging, but ultimately, I haven't given in yet. There's still some white pills because the more people that see what's going on, the more people understand how badly they're being lied to, and maybe they'll step back and say, the louder my opinion, maybe the less informed I am.
Yeah, I've got a dog in the house, and someone's going to go and calm the dog down. But she's not a well dog, so she gets barky when she hears stuff. Her name's Katie, podcast dog. One of the interesting things that's happened is that in America, Tucker Carlson, as I said earlier, did this tour de force last night against the Canadian media, which I love. And I'm sure for the media hearing me say that as someone who was involved in the media, and I know they all hate Tucker Carlson, but his work on COVID's been pretty good. It was kind of an astonishing thing. But the other thing is he played the clips of the usual suspects in the American media with their Media Matters talking points, right? They all say the same thing on the same day. And it's all this kind of race, identity politics smear campaign against the drivers, right? Including, there's a guy named Philip Bump, who's one of the worst of the bunch, who writes for the Washington Post. The new talking point coming out of there is the American right uses truckers to import right-wing fury into Canada. I mean,
they're just
knock it off. I mean,
they're
seriously,
just shameless. I don't want to use too many descriptors. They're liars, pure and simple.
Liars,
and they lie, and then they expect me to believe their lies over my own eyes. I was there yesterday.
Yeah.
I was just going 4 hours, 6 hours live, unedited. If something unfavorable happens, it happens, and I can't change it. I interviewed people who wanted to talk. A woman who is a Haitian immigrant who says that she's there because she's had enough. She was there with her friend who was a retired registered nurse who came out of retirement when the government called her up and said, we need you for COVID. She served for 2 years after having come out of retirement during the thick of the pandemic. And then she gets put on administrative unpaid leave after they've used her and abused her because she refuses to get the shot. She's there. I've interviewed people from Kuwait, a trucker from Kuwait, who says he fled Kuwait, because of what he saw was a tyrannical regime, and now he sees it here. Romanians who lived through this experience, who say, we now see infiltrating in Canada exactly what we fled in Romania. And
Matt Taibbi has a piece today calling Trudeau Ceausescu. So
I mean, can you imagine what they do? They try to demonize, they try to ignore, distract, demonize, then they seize the money that they've raised in this give, send, go, or they've criminalized its use. I mean, these
tactics.
If it succeeds, it's the end of democracy. Like I made a joke on Twitter that like, Canada's a democracy, except the government tells you what goes over your face, what goes in your body, when you can leave your house, who you can see, when you can work. And now they're telling you who you can donate to.
I mean, who can protest and who can't.
Oh, right? You guys have made your point. Go home. Sorry, if the people you are protesting tell you when it's time to go home, that's not exactly how peaceful protest works. The lies that this is a violent protest. They were shoveling the snow, salting the War Memorial walkway because the city wasn't doing it. They're feeding the homeless literally. And I interviewed someone who was there yesterday protesting the convoy. So this individual was on Parliament Hill, on the street with the convoy in the thick of it, protesting, saying, you guys better go home now. You're disrupting Ottawa. And we talked for 20 minutes. And his complaint was that in the residential areas, people are getting accosted. People are defecating on front porch steps. And I was like, why would that be the convoy? Like, setting aside, Ottawa has not exactly been the cleanest city in general. It's had a bit of a homeless problem. It's had some, for a small city, it has its social problems.
Yeah.
To blame what happens in the residential areas on the truckers, as though the convoys who've been there shoveling snow, picking up garbage, they decide to go take dumps on people's porchways it doesn't make sense. I got the guy to acknowledge it might not be the convoy, but it's because of the convoy. And I was like, well, so you're saying that basically if they displace the people who would otherwise be in this area to the residential areas, you're basically saying, not in my backyard. Stay where you were and leave us alone in the residential areas. And it's the convoy's fault.
Yeah, I know. I think also some of the people doing the protesting are really captured by propaganda because they seem to be cheering on their own oppression, which is a new thing, right?
Did you see I interviewed the counter protesters last week on Saturday because they had a counter protest in front of City Hall. Setting aside, it was literally an ideological divide. Now, everyone knows my positions on freedom and these unconstitutional mandates from day one. But I'm not affiliated with the convoy, and I consider myself independent, even though I have an opinion. But walking down the street, because you had the convoy protesters on one side, and then you had the the counter protesters on the other. It was literally like walking down a painting where you have dark, stormy clouds on one side and a bright, sunny rainbow on the other. The signs on the counter protesters contain signs like "sterilize white supremacists," "truckers go home," all these things. They were all wearing masks. They were all very
outside,
visibly angry, maybe understandably so. And then the other side is Canadian flags, multicultural people singing, dancing, cheering. I had one individual. His name was Jeremiah, who at one point said, "Everyone," I believe he might have been part of an Indigenous community at the protest. He's telling everyone, go back to Parliament Hill, let these people protest, don't engage. They'll be sitting here protesting nobody. A difference in messaging, a difference in spirit, a difference literally in the colors of the signs, in the spirit. And I interviewed them for a good 30 minutes.
Yeah,
some of them didn't want to talk to me.
I think, and there's a story that came out, I think yesterday or maybe this morning when I was doing my research for the show. The headline is this: lifting restrictions could cause anxiety for many as unknowns persist, experts. So what's happened? I think what's happening with the counter-protesters, God love them, they're entitled, and I would die to defend their right to counter-protest, have been so propagandized that they are now unable to think critically. That's what I think is going on, because they spout stuff that makes no sense. And now we are forced to address the idea that the fear propaganda campaign has been so successful that people don't want to give up their masks and their lockdowns, even if the virus goes away. Right? They've turned the country into a bunch of Howard Hughes nutcases, right?
It's a variation of the Stockholm syndrome. I mean,
absolutely.
Not to get too psychological or psychosomatic. It's true. They have now convinced themselves that they're, and I will call it an oppressive government that has, masked them for their own protection, locked them in their homes for their own protection, alienated and isolated them from friends and family for their own protection. They now fear the whatever inherent risks come with freedom. And it is, they have grown to love their oppressors. And it was Voltaire or another much more intelligent historical figure who said, you can't convince someone who reveres their chains that they're a prisoner. I mean, that's
yeah.
They feel that they need them. Hold me back from myself, basically.
Well, Matthias Desmet said about that, regardless of what you think of his mass formation theory, which I happen to agree with, is that the COVID, the lockdowns and the kind of draconian things happened at a time when a lot of people's lives had no meaning. So, so people signed on wholeheartedly to what sort of looks like a cult, because it gave them like people aren't religious anymore. They, the families are falling apart. Communities are not as connected as they used to be. So, here is this thing that I can do that gives me a purpose in life and helps my fellow man, which is what they believed at the beginning. And they can't give that up now because it's given them a reason to live. I know that sounds weird, but I think there's truth to it.
Well, humans, I think, fundamentally need some form of direction and some form of cosmic reassurance for the cosmic unknowns that come with existence. And yeah. I'm not a religious person. I might be spiritual, but I do think, yes, they're trying to fill that void. And I've seen the way the government itself wants to fill that void. When you have François Legault shutting down businesses, François Legault is the premier of Quebec, shutting down businesses on Sunday, as if that's somehow going to fight COVID. I mean, what he's basically doing, he's doing what religion used to do 30 years ago, where they used to shut down businesses on Sunday for the church. The government wants to replace the church in importance, in influence, in meaning, in direction. And it's like, there's a lot of analogies, but I think religion, as far as a concept goes, is far more constructive in terms of the messaging that it gives and the guidance for life compared to the government, which now comes out and says, do what we say, and if you disagree with it, you're an extremist, racist, whatever. I heard you talking with your guest before about whether or not the incident in Winnipeg could have been driven by the fear mongering.
Yeah,
Robert Barnes and I, when we do our weekly live streams, he's a lawyer out of the States.
Yeah,
we talked about this concept, and he's referred to it as the political permission slip. When people feel that they've gotten the permission from the political leaders, from the government, to go defend against these extremists, they feel empowered to do very bad things. And this is what Justin Trudeau in his big mouth either does understand or does not understand. And I think he might understand it. When he comes out and says things like, those people are putting us all at risk, you're transforming Canadians into existential threats to other Canadians, and you drive a certain amount of extremism, and I dare say bear the responsibility for the way people react to what you are purporting to be an existential threat to their existence and safety.
Look, I agree with you. It's a little bit Waukesha, right? The guy who drove into the parade after all of the, the stuff about the Kyle Rittenhouse exoneration. It kind of has the same feeling about it because he was maybe motivated. Although we don't know. I can't say motivation.
Well, the media doesn't report on the social media posts of the individual, but
yeah, I saw them.
There were many.
I saw them. Yeah. So we've got 10 minutes, and I do want, before we go, I want to tell you that I am going to run the clip of this mom that you interviewed at the Convoy in Ottawa. She was there protesting. This is something true to my heart. I am a recovering alcoholic, and I am in that community, and I know how bad it's been for addicts during this time. Just nobody gave a shit about them. Close the 12-step meetings. Oh yeah, you can do that.
Close the churches, close their meetings then. As if COVID is the biggest threat to the realities that they face. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. And I have been on the warpath about it since the beginning of this, because I'm seeing it. I'm getting the phone calls about people, right, who've either relapsed or they've overdosed, whatever. So you found this woman, and we're both going to disclaimer it here as journalists, right? You weren't able to really do the background. I know you weren't. We're not running that tape. We're running that tape in the show later. Yeah. That's Matt saying, what? Are you running tape? That we weren't able, or you were not able to completely verify what she's saying. But my judgment, as someone within the community, is that she has credibility, right? So just tell me Tell me a little bit about that encounter for you. It must have been very, very emotional for you.
I walk the streets and I talk to everybody, and I just talk. I'm not there to, first of all, I'm a lawyer, litigator, but I'm not there to cross-examine anyone. When the truck driver says he's from Romania, if he's not telling the truth, someone on the internet will find out. When the lady, when people tell their story, I'm just listening. And I'm walking through the convoy, and I see a car with an image of a child, an image of a young man on the window, which I at first thought might have been someone who had an adverse reaction, because there were a few of those vehicles as well.
Yeah.
And I just see a woman who has the look of devastation in her eyes, and I've seen it in people whom I have had experiences with, and you can tell when it's genuine devastation in the eyes. And she tells her story that she lost her 2 sons to overdoses during the pandemic. They relapsed, and when she says things like they were having a good year, those are the types of things that
credible
in your mind, say, yeah, that's not someone who's making up a story would have the knowledge to say.
Yeah.
And then she just told her story, and I just listened, and then I sobbed afterwards like she did.
Oh.
So and then she things that she knew, like the drugs that addicts take to try to get off drugs had been made illegal in Canada. I don't know when, recently. And she just tells the story. She's lost 2 sons to overdoses. I presume there's a lot of history there that goes beyond the pandemic, but the consequences of the pandemic can't be ignored as relates to that. And at one point I said, at the end of it, I said, so what are you doing? How long are you here for? She says, I'm here to the end. What do I have to do? Where do I have to go? Like, what do I have to return to? And then this is the stuff that people just shrug it off. I've had this discussion with people, and they say, oh, the young people who commit suicide, well, they had mental issues before COVID. The people who died of overdoses, well, they had addiction problems pre-COVID. And I was like, yeah. And the people dying from COVID, by and large, had pre-existing conditions as well that predated COVID. And they were, by and large, of a demographic that would have succumbed to something within short order regardless. And while it's tragic on both ends, cutting short a life of 50, 60 years is far different than someone with comorbidities succumbing to what they might have otherwise succumbed to with the seasonal flu. And that's it. I mean, I couldn't verify the story before. I didn't even know it was coming. So when she starts talking to me, I'm just there to listen. And she spoke, and it's tragic and it's heartbreaking. And I know from direct, immediate experience, I have heard more of these types of stories in my own personal milieu than I've heard about 44-year-old healthy individuals dropping dead from COVID.
Yeah. Well, you know what she said, and we're going to, just to clarify, I'm going to run that interview in our main show that we drop tonight on the Trish Wood is Critical podcast. And we're going to run it video. Obviously, you'll only hear the audio then. But she said things that I was following the breadcrumbs, right? She said the meetings were closed. Obviously the isolation, like this was a perfect storm. What public health did with these measures was a perfect storm for relapse and death for all kinds of people, but especially addicts, right? Like, did anybody ever say to experts, what if we do this, what is that going to do? Or is there a way we can facilitate that? Everything was just do it on Zoom and it'll be okay, and it hasn't been okay. And what you're saying, it just kind of reignites the fire in me, and what we've been saying for almost 2 years on the podcast, that for me, the worst thing about COVID is realizing how cruel my fellow countrymen can be. And maybe that's why the trucker protest lifted my spirits. But
and Trish,
right?
Just imagine Premier François Legault comes out and says, and actually tells me, go have a drink to relax. And then Jen Psaki out of the United States, go make a margarita and relax. Like these politicians, above and beyond not having any studies, no science to decide the trade-offs of what they're doing. Yeah. They then go out and promote the most unhealthy responses to the crisis that they're creating. And then Justin Trudeau develops an app so he can go spy on your mental state as well after having spied on, your cell phone. It's abuse. It is government abuse.
It is abuse.
And the people who don't see it that way are so riddled with fear that they think it's necessary for their own protection. Therefore, it can't be abuse.
Yeah, amazing how far along. So you're back in Montreal right now?
Yep, and I'm gonna head back tomorrow because I think tomorrow should be like the most festive of the days of the week.
Yeah. So I also want to deeply and profoundly promote the work you're doing. So please tell people who are watching this how they can find your wonderful reporting and support you too.
I don't consider it reporting. It's just carrying around a camera and listening to people. My YouTube channel, the main one, is called Viva Fry, VIVAFREI. Same on Rumble, which is a more free speech type platform than YouTube. Twitter, where you get the sassy Viva Fry, is the Viva Fry. And we have a separate platform with Robert Barnes called vivabarneslaw.locals.com. And that's where we have really more in-depth discussion about subject matter that can't be discussed on YouTube.
Okay, so I have one last question quickly. I've been asked by a couple of people, what selfie stick is the best stick to use if somebody wants to embark on what you're doing? If we've had
above and beyond the arm, your arm is good, but my arms are short. So I got it. It's called the one I have is called a jobby or a joby, Joby.
Okay.
And when I grew up, my father used to refer to number twos as jobbies. Like you have to do it. Apparently it's a Scottish thing. So it's called a joby, Joby. It's a manipulatable tripod. So it's got like legs that you can bend and twist and hang on things. So it gives you a little extra extension. And for anybody who wants to do this, your phone goes dead if you're live streaming after about an hour. So you need backup battery packs so that you can continually charge your phone while doing it. So I streamed for 6.5 hours one day.
Wow.
Those are the technical things. I need to get an adapter so I can charge the phone while using an external mic.
Yeah.
If it's too noisy, I need to put in the earbud mic. But the basic thing, the Joby tripod is great because you can actually manipulate the legs to be a tripod, to hang off a post, to multi-use.
Brilliant. Okay.
Other than that, you just need a hand in the camera. That's all it takes.
Okay, David, pronounce your last name for me again, please.
Freiheit phonetically means freedom in German.
Okay, perfect. So thank you, David,
My
and
pleasure.
all of our other guests who appeared today. We're going to be doing more of these as time goes on, but I'm really grateful for the people who stepped up for us this morning. And as I say at the end of every podcast, stay critical. See ya.